The explosion happening right now over Russia is impressive. What is known about this situation? Well, let's get into the details. But obviously it's a complicated issue. And look, on May 1st, they attacked the Tuapse refinery. On May 3rd, the Primoros oil terminal. On May 4th, the Samara refinery. And on May 5th, the Krasny refinery. Krasny. On May 7th, the Perm refinery. And also on May 8th, the Karoslavy refinery. On May 13th, the Taman oil terminal. On May 15th, the Ryazan refinery. On May 17th, the Moscow refinery. On May 20th, the Kosovo refinery, or rather the Kostovo refinery. And that's how things have been these days. And look, this is what the attacks look like. It's a swarm of Ukrainian drones. Listen to this.
Thank you for watching.
Это что это такое, блядь, творится? It's a Ukrainian swarm.
That's how the Ukrainian drones are coming in a swarm. And, well, what used to be a series of constant attacks from Russia against Ukraine, this has turned around. And now, well, it's a constant series of Ukrainian attacks against Russia. And specifically a particular issue. If you keep attacking, sooner or later, you'll run out of oil. The problem is so serious that situations are starting to arise. Very curious situations where you can see how drones are being launched towards NATO. Today, a report came out showing the following. Look, let's see if we can put this image on the screen because it draws attention. Let's see if I can put it up there. This notice reaching Lithuania stands out. Yes, a drone alert even forced the Lithuanian president himself to take shelter in recent months, but especially in recent weeks, unmanned aircraft, that is, drones, have been reported. And they have forced people, including the Lithuanian president himself and the prime minister, to take shelter. For example, earlier today in Vilnius, they had to take shelter because suddenly a series of drones were detected entering the airspace. It has also affected them recently with several similar alerts in the Baltic states due to the increase in bombings between Ukraine and Russia. The residents of the Lithuanian capital, Vilnius, received a message from the army on their cell phones at around 1:20 warning of an air raid. Go immediately to a shelter or a safe place. Take care of your family members. Wait for further instructions. That's what it said. According to the DNS news agency, the president of the country, Gitanas Nausėda, including even the prime minister, Inga Rugiene, they were reportedly taken to shelter, in other words, to take cover shortly before the army lifted the alert and told citizens to leave the shelters. Afterwards, the alert came that everything was calm and that they could return to their normal activities. Right? But obviously, this has caused reactions. Right? What's going on? How much further will this escalate? Obviously, well, there's a huge issue here. Another thing that stands out is what's happening between Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin. Listen, there were meetings. There was already a rapprochement between the two. Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin are showing global coordination, but they're also leaving some things unresolved. For example, the energy agreements that were supposed to happen are still being delayed, meaning they didn't happen. They keep announcing that it's going to be the biggest energy agreement in the world, and so on. No, it doesn't happen. China and Russia are using Wednesday's Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin summit to emphasize strategic coordination and portray themselves as a stabilizing force. Faced with a situation they say is marked by conflict over Ukraine, Russia, the Middle East, and tensions with the West. It's curious, isn't it? The leaders of these countries also assured that they will be strengthening strategic cooperation and that in the future they will see how to develop energy cooperation, a topic that is key for both China and Russia, right? In his message to Putin during the meeting at the Great Hall of the People, Xi highlighted the following. We have been able to continuously deepen mutual political trust and strategic coordination with unwavering perseverance that has withstood countless tests. The message says, that also seems obviously interesting to me. Xi says that the world is at risk of being ruled by the law of the jungle. While he praises the ties between China and Russia, that's just the usual thing, right? The obvious, the usual, doesn't surprise us when it comes to the conversations between Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin. Yes, they did start with a very small meeting with just a few delegates. That also caught people's attention. Honestly, it wasn't as long as the one they had with Trump. Well, those are some strange signals, right? Signs of friendship, but not over the top, let's say, right? He says we have good neighborly relations and friendly cooperation. And, well, it's obviously a classic situation, right? Especially every time he meets with the United States, he ends up meeting with Russia afterwards. That's also something that was to be expected. At this moment, Russia is also launching a drone attack against several regions of Ukraine. At least 2 people have already died, and 12 are injured according to reports from Dnipro, Odessa, Kharkiv, and Sumy. So the war keeps going, right? Obviously, Moscow says it continues bombing Ukrainian cities after more than 4 years of invasion. So this goes on, doesn't it? There's no stop to it, right? Meanwhile, the United Kingdom, changing the subject, is not delaying some sanctions on Russian oil and gas in the middle of the conflict in the Middle East, right? That's obviously important too. Some sanctions on oil and liquefied natural gas have been postponed. The Russians claim that to help control the skyrocketing prices, they are already postponing sanctions against Russia. In other words, the same thing the United States did. They removed some of the sanctions, and that way there's the possibility of getting cheap oil from Russia and balancing things out a bit, right? That, well, I guess it will bother the Iranians themselves, because in the end, that's a problem for them, right? It's a problem not being able to put more pressure, because for the Iranians, the strategy is to put pressure on Europe and Asia, and that way, put pressure on the United States indirectly, right? But if suddenly Russia starts selling them oil, then the pressure loses its strength, right? So, I mean, it's like those constant balances and imbalances, right? Even among the same partners, colleagues, and so on, right? Well, in that sense, they also keep contradicting themselves, so to speak, right? Another thing that stands out is what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz. Hormuz, you can see this image. Let's see if we can put it up here. But yes, this image really stands out. That's one of the most recent ones. Let's put it that way, showing how marine traffic has looked in the last 24 hours. The ships have moved forward, and these advances, these movements have caused the price of oil to drop a little. Because let's say, even though it's suspected that obviously they're paying the Iranians a price, not just to pass through there. The fact that oil is circulating has obviously caused prices to drop a little again. They're still high, but well, a while ago it was at $112. Sorry, 106, and they're still the same, still at $106. So the price is staying a little lower than it was. That's also true. Well, it's interesting. How have you all been? How have you been? Today we also have other important matters. Big greetings to Eliseo, to Jesus Narro. Good afternoon, Jesus. How have you been? MT. Big greetings, Francisco Arce, Jesus Narro. Well, thank you very much for liking and for being here. Thanks also to those who watch us later. Well, thank you very much. Huh? Well, look, girls, here's another image. That's another situation they're experiencing over there in Russia at the refineries. Let me see if I can put it right here. This one. This is one of the largest oil refineries in Russia that has had to completely stop its operations due to drone attacks. This was suspended because of the attacks that started happening. Since May 15th, 5 days ago, this plant represents 5% of Russia's total oil refining capacity. And this is good. In the end, these moves keep causing problems. Obviously, you can imagine the pollution and other issues. But within this conflict, what is usually lost the least, in general? conflicts generally aren't good for the environment, right? I mean, that's left aside. It's secondary, right? If it even matters at all. So that's how the attack is. This is one of the largest refineries we've seen. Well, we've made a timeline of how many refineries have been attacked, and it's already quite a lot, right? Counting this one, the Ryazan refinery, the one in Moscow, all of them. It's not just a few refineries that have been attacked. It's part of a massive operation that's been going on for over a year now. Now, about the refineries, right? It's been going on for almost 2 years now, right? It started happening gradually, didn't it? That's pretty incredible too. Let's move on to some of the other images that are drawing attention today. This is the situation that's happening with Cuba, which we'll be analyzing later on. But pay attention to what's happening, because the Republican Maria Elvira Salazar, this congresswoman, claims that today is a glorious day. She says it's not only for the Cubans on the island, but for every Cuban in exile, for every family torn apart, for every neighbor, every friend, every loved one who spent their life waiting to return home. For 67 years, a group of gangsters took over a nation and turned it into their business. But today is the beginning of the end. The forces of freedom are coming, and Cuba, which was born free in 1902, is finding its way back. It says the following. Let us listen to part of this message.
It is a glorious day for the Cuban people. After 6 decades of tragedy, of misery, of distress, Cubans will be free soon. And there are no words to describe the joy they feel. Not only the Cubans on the island, but also the Cubans we represent in South Florida and others who live abroad. But we represent all of them, all over the country and across the world.
Well, apart from the message, it's a message that is given exactly at the moment when the revolution is happening there in Cuba. Pues la revolución. Oh, yeah. Well, these messages are from the United States. Later, we will see what the United States officially says as a government. What does Marco Rubio say, among other congressmen who also represent the state and congressmen who have been reacting and sending a message that the next step is to go after Raul Castro, which, by the way, there is already an official accusation. But the official accusation is that they are going to try to detain this Raul Castro. So be careful with that topic as well. It would be historical. It would be a tremendous turn on this topic if they went after Raul Castro. And, well, we don't know if this is going to happen, but it is the approach that they bring. It is a turn apart from that. Because like all the moves that Trump makes, that is, one move puts out the fire of the previous move that went wrong, and then they create another situation. So they are generating small situations, some bigger than others. And so with that, that's how they're holding on, so to speak. It's a very curious topic, but almost every month this year, huge things, right? The fall of Maduro right here. Some important leaders, let's say just like what happened with Ali Khamenei, right? The supreme leader Khamenei himself, not the supreme Iranian leader. And well, everyone turned to look at Cuba, perhaps. Well, not to go to Cuba, maybe. Well, it seems that in that sense, Trump has been very active, right? So, and then the operation suddenly stays in the middle of what it seems, right? Because it sounds like, look, the regime didn't fall. In Iran, the regime didn't fall. So regimes are not sustained only by their key figures, although sometimes it seems that way. But it's not like that, right? There are others behind who are supporting that whole regime, and they keep it going, right? Well, things like that on this topic. So how has Jose Zarate been? Huge greetings. Blanca Barceló says she is already more than 90 years old. Yes, I know. She's already old, let's say, right? How have you been, Jesus? Thanks for joining us and greetings. He says, okay. He says, very good. Blanca, bad. What's up? How have you been? Very good, Eliseo, to all the community that's joining in. Thank you very much. Leonardo, tell us MT. How was that trip, that meeting with nature? Leonardo, how did things go for you? Everything went well, right? Everything went as you expected. right? It was a good experience. Thank you very much. And it's great that you're here with us. And to the community that's watching us, well, also, right? Are you interested in adopting? Big greetings. He says he's interested in adopting new states. He leaves the control of the regime and takes over the resources, he says. Blanca, how have you been, Blanca? Yes, I mean, the interest isn't really to overthrow the regime, but in any case, that it's not hostile to the United States. And in any case, because business can be done, right? That businesses can be expanded there. In that sense, the case of Iran hasn't turned out that way, right? At least until now, right? And well, Venezuela, yes, right? Venezuela, they're already working on the issue of gold, the issue of oil, etc., right? Hey, let's move on to other matters, other important topics as well. There's also, well, it's part of that, yes, of that reality, all of it, right? Let's go to other issues, other important issues. There's a very curious case in which, well, let's say it's a very, well, in the world, right? I mean, come on, whales in the end make huge journeys. That's what is estimated. But it hadn't been possible to clearly measure what those journeys were like. And let's see if I can put it on a map. This map we're looking at is from a study that was done to see how or where a humpback whale traveled, right? Look at the movement it made. It's impressive, isn't it? That's the first time it could be confirmed. Although, well, that's how it is. But they wanted to confirm if the movement could really be of that magnitude. So if you look at the marks on the tail, you can see the same marks on both sides. I mean, one is the one you see there. In the marks they have, the one that's on the side of Australia. So it was determined that this little whale, or this big whale, right, had traveled, well, a significant number of kilometers. Just to give us an idea, that's about 15,000 kilometers. Imagine that. This humpback whale has completed an ocean journey that, according to reports, would be the longest ever recorded so far. Scientists managed to document that this animal travels between breeding areas separated by thousands of kilometers in the open ocean. In Ilosi. It was first seen in 2013 in a humpback whale breeding area off the coast of Bahia, Brazil. About 22 years later, in September, it was seen again alone in Hervey Bay, off the coast of Queensland, Australia. Those places are separated by about 9,383 miles, which is 15,100 kilometers, making it the greatest distance ever recorded and documented in sightings of the same humpback whale. Well, that's also amazing, this journey, right? What these little whales do, right? Esto lo llevó. This was carried out by the Pacific Whale Foundation and Griffith University. Well, they took thousands of photographs of whale tails until they found the exact match. After that, well, I said 22 years, something like that. Just imagine, well, 19,000 photographs were analyzed until they found this little whale and examined the tails with a magnifying glass, right? And that's how they determined it was exactly the same one, right? That it was, well, this exact one. Look, let's zoom in. Look at its little spots. Yes. So memorize them, and then we'll see the other one. And that's it. There it is. If you can see or look, check out this little mark. Look. Look, this little mark here catches my attention, and these little dots, yes. But this mark is the same mark the other one has. There it is, look. The little dots too. Yeah. And, well, obviously, they see it in more detail. But yes, we're here for the story in this whale sighting. He says, how has it been? He says, yes, like fingerprints, like digital fingerprints. Exactly, exactly. Greetings, Top Tennis Club. How are you? Hello? Blanca says, but I think it will be quick investments to give jobs to the locals and avoid migration. Blanca says, and about what's happening in Venezuela. Okay, Sol Garcia. How have you been? Jose Arte says, I imagine that the whales use the strong currents to their advantage to make that journey. Birds also migrate in large numbers. Yes, well, Birds are impressive, like albatrosses, for example. It's amazing. Let's see if we have the information here. Let me tell you. Let's see how far an albatross travels. Alba, man. An albatross in its lifetime. Let's see if there's any information, right? Look, not just for, wow, it's crazy. It says the albatross can travel about 8 million kilometers over its lifetime, which is equivalent to going around the world more than 200 times and making 10 round trips to the moon in its lifetime. I mean, they go back and forth to the moon. This was published by BBC Earth, right? They're the ones who make the best animal documentaries. Impressive. Why? Because look, it says they spend about 5 to 6 years flying non-stop. I mean, they rarely come down. Basically, they spend all their time in. It says they spend up to 5 or 6 years in a row flying over the ocean in their youth without touching solid ground. 6 years, imagine just taking off and flying. You live there in the air, flying. 5 or 6 years. They've seen them land. When they land, they're really clumsy because of how they are. When you see an albatross land, consider yourself lucky. Because, well, you're probably seeing one that's been flying for years and you're witnessing something really special. And, well, that's why they trip and fall and all that, you know. It says, since they can live more than 60 years and are tireless foragers in the open ocean, the total count of their aerial odyssey is simply colossal. It says, well, there it is. There's it says, well, okay, fine. There are several organizations and associations that are dedicated to researching this. I think I've never seen an albatross myself, right? Seagulls, yes, a lot. But I honestly don't remember ever seeing an albatross. He says, okay, well, that's it, right? But if I was traveling, right, that's the surprising part. The most surprising, he says they glide, but they fish. Eliseo says that, greetings, Eliseo, how have you been? Veronica, she says Ukraine is going all out against Russia. She says it's getting really intense. You can see it. You can already see some major movements happening over there. He says here they call albatrosses seagulls. Okay. Or storks. What's a seagull? The stork or the albatross? He says the currents, like the turtles in Finding Nemo. Yeah, that's right. They would get on like on the subway, right? Basically, they'd get on like this. Boom. Let's go. He says, what happened? He says, in the world, you are 4 from the donkey. 4 from the donkey. What? How was top tennis? How did it go? He says, UFOs are always flying around too. He says, Icon, how have you been, Icon? Huge shout out. Who else is out there? So awesome. Well, to the whole community. Marisol, how are you? How are you doing? He says, Dear Pepe, here today in Connecticut, it's so hot, we're cooking. He also says Connecticut. I mean, he says everything. Let's see how things are over there. But you are, let me check exactly where it is. Let's see what the highs will be or how things will go. Let's see, it says, okay. Let's see. Well, you get that too. And look, you're up north. You're even farther north than New York. And I mean, I imagine you're used to the cold too. I mean, you're saying that you're here, right? On this side. And well, this whole stretch along the East Coast, right? Very hot. Interestingly, the West is hot. The East is hot. Obviously, the South has always been hot, right? What's surprising is how far the heat is reaching. Well, now it's almost reaching, what's it called? Up to Canada, right? Basically, right? So, yeah, it's intense. You guys are up there, right? Above New York. Or am I wrong? Please tell me. That's right. But here's Connecticut, right? I see it just a bit above. But you're basically at the same temperature as New York, right? Yesterday, they reported 38 degrees. That's quite a lot, isn't it? But look, for example, towards Washington, right? It must be really hot in Washington too. Just look at that. It's like a heat wave over there. And well, check out the report we did a moment ago, right? The El Nino phenomenon. Because, well, yeah, I mean, first I mentioned the NOAA report and then the European meteorologists report, because the European one is even harsher, right? And I think that the petrel is a bird with the longest wings. The petrel. I don't know which one it is. Let's see. Petrel bird. That one. That's the Arctic petrel, it's called, right? Here they call it the giant petrel. Hey, come on. So it says Abanto marino. What? Giant petrel. I want to check if the measurements are here. Measurements. It says length between 80 to 90 centimeters, but the wingspan, I mean, the wings are 2 meters and 10 centimeters. Between 1.85 meters and 2 meters, 10 centimeters, weight between 3 and 5 kilos males are considered bigger and heavier than females. Well, almost always, right? It's almost always like that. How much? Well, let's see. Maximum distance. Maximum. Let's see how far they fly. It says the petrel stands out as one of the seabirds. I'll show you the picture. It says it measures between 85 centimeters and 1 meter in length with a wingspan of up to 2.1 meters. It can travel up to 2,500 kilometers away from its colony in a single trip. I'll be right back. 500 kilometers, right? Imagine traveling 2,500 kilometers away, then returning just like that, right? I mean, that's 5,000 kilometers you're going to see. Traveling that far from your nest. Imagine perfect sense of direction, right? This is really amazing, isn't it? It really has that albatross look like those other birds, right? Let's see if this picture looks nice and if I can place it here. It's this one, look. It fell. Classic ad. There it is. It won't let me. There it is. There it is. Looks nice, right? They call it giant petrel there. Very good. Well, let's go. Let's go. Thank you so much for joining us. They say they don't come back to see what I said, lambs. That's how it goes, right? I mean, they leave and... Just a moment. We'll be back after getting food. Someone says, I also thought the Andean condor was the biggest bird in the world. Is it? Let's find out. I don't know. Andean condor. Wingspan, right? That means the wings. Here they are. Here are all the biggest ones. Let's see if they don't have... I upload things that are kind of like... No, you can't see it. You can't see. You can't really see the measurement. No, it is bigger. It has a wingspan of 3.6 meters. I mean, the condor is impressively big. I mean, it's really, really big. It's massive. Look at this picture of the condor. It's even more impressive. Here it goes. Check out the little condor, right? And look below. There's a wolf. It's beating up a wolf, right? The wolf's running like that. Look at its size. No, the Andean condor is on another level, right? That's really extreme. That's really crazy. Imagine that, right? Imagine, yeah. I've seen some pictures, some videos where they put a condor next to a person. It's impressive. I'm not sure if that's exaggerated, but it definitely looks huge, especially with its wings spread. It looks gigantic, doesn't it? And to think that, I mean, there used to be even bigger birds, right? I mean, that's crazy. I mean, when you see the ostrich is really impressive, honestly. I mean, the ostrich and all that. There's another bird that's also like the ostrich that doesn't fly. Or like chickens or something. It has beaks, spiked claws, and is extremely dangerous. Each year in its country, maybe Oceania or nearby, it causes problems. Or on which continent. But it's a bird that's dangerous. I mean, your life is at risk because of a bird. I mean, it's because of the beak and the claws it has back here. I don't know what they call it, the spur. I don't know what they call this thing it has here. And they attack. They attack really viciously. I mean, they're strong. They're like velociraptors, you know? I mean, they're really fierce, right? Well, I don't know if you've seen how ostriches get angry too, right? They always show them like they're hiding their heads. No, not when they get angry, right? Geese are also intense, interesting. I don't know why, but geese are kind of scary. I don't know. I mean, they get intense. They're really beautiful, but when they get angry, watch out. So, let's go. He says the spur, right? Yeah. Leonardo says, imagine a vacation without technology, trying to be happy and disconnect from the world, starting over, being born again. That's great, Leonardo. Man, that's excellent. I think we should do that from time to time. He asks, does that come from Antarctica? Topspin says. He says, yes, Clavel Condor from the Andes. He says it's the boss. I didn't mention him because I thought you meant seabirds, says Topspin. That's right. I think it's one of the biggest seabirds. But the condor is incredible too, right? Not sure if it's the biggest, but it's definitely impressive. Well, let's go. We'll keep talking. Take care. Have a great day. See you. Goodbye.